It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He's Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we kick off a Tuesday. Gary, how are you?
Not bad. Can't complain.
All right.
Let me get the one story.
And then we're going to go on and complain for 5 hours. I can't complain. Yeah, you can. I've seen you do it.
Oh, wait a minute. That is my job.
I can't complain. Well, then you're fired.
What do you do for a living? Complain?
I complain. my wife says, you know, you're perfect for your job. What? What is that? Oh, I mean, is that a compliment? What just happened? Yeah, there we are. What a day. All right.
Well, I love this.
Hey, have you tried that? That new all the theme parks are opening our Six Flags. We used to be near Six Flags, so I went and rode the roller coaster called the Stock Market today, and it was man, it's a neck breaker. You should wear a neck brace if you're on it. It was crazy. Well, I was telling you, I was watching it in the morning. It was down like, I don't know, somewhere 1,200 points. And then a false story got out that Trump was going to pause the tariffs for 90 days. And there was a swing of like 2,000 points. It just went whoosh in no time. And I saw people on X posting, look, stocks are back. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, see, there was nothing to worry about. I was like, this is based on. And then the White House comes out and says, we never said anything about a 90-day pause.
Well, they got a double win there. That's when you saw that 2,000 point shift. Mm-hmm. And so they were able to have CNBC apologize. Mm-hmm. They were able to say that's fake news and get a reprieve. Mm. And then after that, it just, it went back. What did it end up? Like 400 points, whatever?
For the day?
Yeah. Down 400 points.
Down 349 points on the Dow.
Okay.
The NASDAQ was up 15 points. So
I saw that. But again, you look at that long term because as we know, people, and I don't know whether that was where people said, let's pause a little bit. Let's see what happens today. By the way, today is a very, very important day in history. Mm. It was 25 years ago today. 25 years ago that I had my first hole-in-one.
Wow. I thought we were supposed to get the day off for that. Why are we even here?
215-yard 5-wood. Was it Indian Creek in Hood River, Oregon?
Yeah.
Right at the base, looking right up at Mount Hood.
Yeah.
And there I was. I had the rage of a serial killer directed at myself because I already knew at that point on April 8th of 2000 that I had agreed to come here to Dallas. So the week before, I went there and I shot an 82. And I'd never broken 80 before. And I said, I can do it. Let's go back the next weekend. I want to play this course again. I can break 80. And I had a 12 on the first hole, which was a par 4. So that was gone. And so I just was livid, just absolutely livid. And got to the 8th hole, par 3, 215 yards. Very tough, small green, surrounded by forest land and whatever, some swamp. It was wet in there in the forest. It was sort of swampy. And from 215 yards out, in the hole! And I wasn't even happy. I was so angry because I knew a hole-in-one is just luck. And I wasn't happy, and it was. And I realized that, well, not at that point, but that was the beginning of my point saying you have to enjoy life. You can't be enraged because you happen to, on this day, not be able to hit a ball with a stick.
Is that when you started carrying a gun on the golf course? Or was it later?
It was, yes. I carried the gun on the golf course.
Shooting at the gun, shooting at the ball.
No. To throw to the people I'm playing with in case I got out of hand.
Yeah.
Shoot me. But getting back to the whole situation yesterday, I saw, where is it here? Got to make sure. Did you see Art Laffer?
Oh. Wow.
Art Laffer and Stephen Moore's column in the Wall Street Journal.
Mm.
A win-win exit strategy for Trump on tariffs. Now, it's interesting because Trump yesterday said his plan is to zero out, have no capital gains tax, right?
Right. Yeah.
This year. Now, whether they'll be able to get that through, I don't know. But zero capital gains tax. I don't think is that in reconciliation?
I don't know.
I don't believe that's in that's not in this current Senate bill. But he came out with it today because I know there's concern at the White House. We all know about the economic growth. Right, and one of the reasons they want to lower the capital gains tax is because they believe if you lower the tax, you'll get more revenue. Mm. That came from Art Laffer, who wrote this column. That's the Laffer curve.
Yeah.
That there's a curve that exists where if you have high taxes, you will raise a certain amount of revenue, but if you lower them on the chart, you lower it, you will actually get more revenue because you've expanded economic growth. Mm. So this was written by Art Laffer and Stephen Moore. Stephen Moore was, along with Kudlow, one of the more capitalist, as we know, advisors to President Trump in his first term. And just so you know, I'm going to play this audio here. We have played it before. I'm now going to play the extended portion of it on the Laffer curve. So you know that the Laffer curve became part of popular culture in a movie.
Yeah.
Where Ben Stein talked about tariffs and the Laffer curve.
Mm-hmm. In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the The Great Depression, passed the a tariff bill, the Harley-Smoot Tariff Act, which raised or lowered, raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve, you will get exactly the same amount of revenue as at this point. This is very controversial. Does anyone know what Vice President Bush called this in 1980? Anyone? Something DOO economics. Voodoo economics.
He's doing all he can to give them hints. Anyone? Up or down? Anyone?
From Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So that's, just in case you don't know who Art Laffer is, to tell the people, but a win-win strategy. And he said, it's time to bring the promised long-term gain from his trade policies. Here's how to do that. Mm-hmm. In 2018, the group of 7 meeting in Quebec, Mr. Trump made a remarkable free trade proposition to the world leaders. The U.S. would lower its tariffs to 0 if their nations would do the same. His exact words, no tariffs, no barriers. That's the way it should be. And no subsidies. I even said no tariffs. Ultimately, that's what you want. You want tariff-free, no barriers, and you want no subsidies. Larry Kudlow, who headed Mr. Trump's Economic Council, recalls that this was a jaw-dropping incident. European and Asian leaders sprinted for the exits, among other things that exposed the trade policy hypocrisy of Brussels and Beijing. This suggests an opportunity for Mr. Trump to avoid the economic damage from tariffs that we saw under Herbert Hoover and Richard Nixon. Our proposal will immediately reverse the dangerous stock market sell-off. Mr. Trump should give a globally televised address announcing to the world that the U.S. is ready to drop its tariffs and industry subsidies to zero tomorrow on any nation that does the same. This would be the ultimate reciprocal tariff policy. President Trump and the U.S. would regain the moral high ground in trade disputes. It would be enlightening to see which supposedly free trade nations accept Mr. Trump's challenge. Who better off to pull this off? Who better to pull off what could become the greatest art of the deal negotiation in world history? It would restore free, fair, and unfettered global trading systems. Everyone, everywhere would get richer. The American economy would be great again. And Donald Trump would win the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. There's only one problem with it. By the way, and they wrote this yesterday. This came out yesterday afternoon. So they already have knew at that point. When I read that, I went, wait a minute, when did they write that? Because it's not about tariffs anymore. Right. As we all know, it's not about tariffs. So when they wrote that, knowing that it wasn't about tariffs anymore, and the problem is, if they did that, if the president agreed to do that, you would have the United States would still have a huge goods trade imbalance. Right. And so that's not all likely to happen. It's sort of what he did with USMCA and NAFTA. He really didn't change much. He promoted that he was going to, but he really didn't. It's really USMCA is basically NAFTA. And we said it at the time when he said this is the greatest free trade agreement. We went, okay, that's cool. We'll go along with it. Everybody, all the always Trumpers are happy with it. We won't tell them that they didn't get what Trump told them they were going to get in it, because it was basically the same. And then he called it the greatest free trade agreement ever. And now it's a piece of crap. So it didn't work out once for him. He's not going to do it again. I think that Trump realized that he compromised too much in that one based on his own values. One of the last calls we got, or last messages we got yesterday before the show was over, somebody emailed me and said, do you believe Trump wants to destroy the economy? No, I don't. I think he actually believes this works. I don't think anything Trump wants to do is based
he's
on
not trying to
destroy the nation at all.
No.
I don't agree with that whatsoever.
No.
It's how do you get there? But from right now, the Wall Street Journal also said the other day every country should come and say we're ready to drop our tariffs. Well, we'll see what happens. European Union said we'll do the same thing now.
Yeah, yesterday they renewed their offer. Said we'll go to zero.
Yeah, very good. I'm glad you brought that up. They renewed that. That actually was part of TTIP that they had brought up that back then, and then that negotiation, I think, stopped in 2018. But they had already offered that to the United States. So this is an offer that Europe has given the United States before, but Trump said, nope, you got to pay us back. You have to pay retribution for all the years you've ripped us off. So, where's the negotiating point? If you've got these companies or these countries coming up and saying, we want to have full free trade across the board, that doesn't get the White House. Understand now that the White House has made it clear, and it's been since last Wednesday, this is not about unfair tariffs.
Well, and Navarro was out there saying, well, yeah, but that doesn't do anything. Europe still has the VAT tax and everything else, and, just throwing everything at it. That a zero tariff deal is not going to happen.
But a VAT tax goes after imports and exports. As we
you have Netanyahu right there in the White House, willing to drop all tariffs. Well, and then Trump with Netanyahu sitting right there. There's not going to be a trade imbalance. We're not going to have a trade imbalance.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to do this, proud to be doing this. This is all about trade imbalance. And Netanyahu even said, we're going to work to zero out the trade imbalance. I'd like to see what that looks like. Netanyahu said that. I'd like to see what that looks like. We'll see. Show me that deal.
Interesting times ahead, but like I said, that Art Laffer and for the former advisor, economic advisor to Trump in the first term, promoting what we have said. We'd love to see something like that. And, they also talk about the fact that you also, if the unfair trading, the people that have the tariffs on you, you go after them, but you do free trade with everybody else.
Right.
Want to make sure I put that in there. I skipped over that. I wanted for brevity, but I want to make sure that was in there.
One of the stories at the Wall Street Journal, Trump turns screws on China, leaves door open to deals with other countries. The market right now is up. The futures are up right now. And it just depends on what's said next.
Well, today Trump said if they don't pull it by today, it's 50% on China.
Yeah, on China, yeah.
Right.
And so it seems like the market's okay. Go after China. We don't care about China. If you're working deals with everybody else, we'll take that win for the market. I wouldn't put my money on that until the deals happen. If the deals happen, then okay. But that's where the market is right now. It's been a roller coaster based on whatever was said last.
We got a great show ahead. 866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Cold weather takes a toll on trucks. As warmer weather rolls in, it's time to assess the impact winter has had on your vehicle to help avoid downtime and keep your rig rolling through to next winter. Spring temperature swings can cause your tire pressure to fluctuate. Start your spring maintenance routine by checking your tire pressure and make sure your tires are properly inflated based on the load you're hauling. Underinflated tires cause premature wear, reduced fuel economy, and premature tire failures. Take care of your tires now before you find yourself stranded roadside this spring.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You and I were just talking about Israel and Netanyahu coming out and saying, well, we'll work on what we can to even out the trade imbalance. The trade imbalance with Israel is $7.4 billion a year. Mm-hmm. Israel and Netanyahu, there is a chance. They're absolutely celebrating the chance to even to even out trade with the United States and buy another $7.4 billion in arms to protect themselves.
Which is nothing.
That the United States in the past will not send them. That's an easy one for them to do.
Yeah.
Give us $7.4 billion in missiles and weaponry and everything else. Here's the check. We're willing to.
We're pull out the checkbook right there in the Oval Office. Here you go.
We're willing to even that up immediately. Yeah. Thank you so much. We're the one country. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
And then he went on to say, I think all the countries should do this with the U.S. It's the right thing to do. Trump says that's very nice. And I thought to myself, well, but that's a very quick road to get there.
For Israel, yes.
I'm surprised. He may have, and maybe we didn't see it. I'm surprised he didn't pull the checkbook out right there. Here you go. Give me 10 Hellfires. What do I have left? It's like shopping at the donut store.
$7 billion? $7.4 billion? Give me 3 toilet seats.
Yes, exactly. 4 American hammers. There you go. Somebody get Elon Musk on the phone. Something bad is happening right now.
Isn't that so late 1980s?
I know, the $4 billion hammer.
Yeah, was that like the late 1980s, early 1990s?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. I did see this yesterday, though, because you're trying to figure out, and you know, when I have conversations, and I've had a lot of them over the last couple of days, most of the most people that I talk to, most Republicans I talk to, are wondering what's going on, and what they tell me is, and this is the majority of calls we have, you know, you've got to have faith in Trump. You know, they really don't know what's going on. They've tried going through the minutia of it, and they're simply saying it's a negotiation. It doesn't matter whether Trump and his advisors will say it's a negotiation one day and not the next day. They all say that's part of the negotiations. One of the things that we have said is where people have asked us up until really over the weekend, when Trump made it clear that this isn't about tariffs anymore. We finally know what the end game is. And the end game is he wishes to equalize trade with every country. This was interesting, though, when I saw this from Peter Navarro, and I wonder if Trump agrees with this. And we talked about this the other day about companies coming to the remember, one of the things that they've been saying is, if you want to sell to the United States, you've got to make it here in the United States, right?
Right.
So Trump's been telling foreign companies to come over here, right? If you're going to sell here, avoid the tariffs, build here. Then Navarro says this yesterday. The business model where BMW and Mercedes comes to South Carolina and have us assemble German engines and Austrian transmissions, that doesn't work for America. It's bad for our economics. It's bad for our national security. We want everybody to come here, which means every part manufacturer.
Right. Not just them, everybody.
Right. That everything must be made here in the United States.
No,
and we talked about that yesterday.
Navarro said that with because he was in response to the little back and forth on X with Elon Musk. You know that. Look, we want the tires made here. We want everything made here, not just assembled here. Right. He called him. He said he's not a car maker. He's a car assembler, and we want everything, all those parts, made here.
But in essence, everyone is an assembler,
right,
including China. You know, we went through because it goes back like to 2014. No, it was probably 2016, 2017. It was the last time we were talking about tariffs. And it came out about the iPhone. It's assembled in China. It's not made in China. It's assembled in China. Parts are made, what was it, like 24 different countries around the globe make the parts, including, what was it? I forgot how many here in the United States made it. But there were a number. But China assembled it. But the vast majority of the profits went to Apple. And so it's like, that's how complicated trade is. I'll have to find that article again because it really gives you an idea of what's going on. The different trade routes.
And the word is on the iPhone, they're going to start moving that to India because the bigger tariffs on China, of course, would send the cost of an iPhone. By the way, that's when people are going to notice. Start charging people more for their cell phones than they're already paying. What they say, anywhere from $2,000 to $2,400 is what the estimate was. One of the estimates that I read yesterday for a new phone. Well, that gets really, really expensive. So the question is, again, how do you mitigate that if you're Apple? And then word got out, quite possibly going to India instead of China, since the bigger tariff would be on China. But you're still going to pay more. There's no way that you won't. If all the tariffs stay in place, there's no way you won't. No way you won't pay more for pretty much every car. Just depends on the level of tariff based on where the final assembly happens, but all of them will have an increase.
And as we explained on the internet, we're having conversation with some of my friends. They said, what's your goal? Why are you wary about all this, and why do you want clarity? And I said, well, because I've seen people in the Trump administration say this would take 2 or 3 or 4 years to get fully to moving all these lines back to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it would take longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, by that time, if the economy is down, Democrats win. Which then I put that question. It may be an unfair question, but it makes you think. What is the more critical problem that we face? The economy that we currently have now, or Democrats being in power?
Right.
I had one of my leftist acquaintances say, do you regret voting for Trump now? No, I knew he was going to do this. We knew there was going to be something like this.
We
had said this a long time. It's the one thing we're worried. But no, weaponization of government had to end. Mm-hmm. The border
had to be sealed.
Border had to be sealed without question.
Yep.
And we needed a much stronger foreign policy.
I don't regret a thing.
Neither do I. No, and Trump has done, again, the vast majority of what I've wanted. But we go issue by issue. That's what we do here. And we think it's important. Other shows can play cheerleader, and that's fine for everything. We explain why we disagree with any Republican or any Democrat, and we go the specifics through it. Some people get mad because we do that. That's fine. But we're being intellectually honest on the issues, and we're telling you straight up, the people change. Trump will be gone. Mm-hmm. And it's the ideas that you are promoting. And in this case, I believe that there is no reason to exaggerate. There is no reason to lie. There is no reason to not be absolutely clear to the American public and the people as, the people of the world as to what you want precisely in something that happens like this. And for the president yesterday, what he called people that were upset to sit there when people are losing 401ks who are going to retire, and you call them weak, and I forgot the other word that he used. To sit there and say people that are against tariffs, because now we're not there anymore. This goes back a month and a half ago, where he was saying that we're going to get rid of the income tax. He was on that yesterday, that the greatest time in history was between 1870 and 1913. And everybody's like, what the hell is he talking about? And, we need to get back to tariff. He actually brought it up again yesterday. We need to get rid of the income tax, and we need to, use tariffs. It's impossible. You can't do that. You've seen what happens with these tariffs that would be minor for what you would actually need to replace the income tax with tariffs, which would be anywhere between 100 and 200%.
Right.
In order to do it. I want clarity. I want because I don't want name calling when people are upset and question about their 401k that they're losing money. That's legit. That's a legit thing. My concern is I don't want Democrats to win in 26. I don't want Democrats to win in 28. That's it. Say whatever you want. That's my only goal. I don't want to lose. And when you're telling me that the economy may hurt for a couple of years and it's coming from your administration, I'm not wrong and you're not wrong for being concerned to make sure that they communicate effectively.
One of the two big promises, we're going to seal the border. We're going to bring prices down. Seal the border, and now, but the economy may take a few years.
Well, it was funny because there's how they're jumping. Gasoline's going down. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but nobody likes the reason why it's going down.
Not for good reason. Because it's believed fewer people are going to be able to afford road trips this summer.
Yeah.
So, yeah. At the moment, again, I said this earlier, at the moment, the markets believe that there's deals to be done with all the countries except China. That's at the moment. That can change with one message in the morning.
You make the call because you're saying, why did you do this?
Mm-hmm.
Saying you're willing to negotiate is a long way from completing a negotiation.
That's what I said earlier. I want to see when the deal's done, I'll lay my dollar down on that. Exactly what I said earlier.
Some of my friends that are in the oil industries are making it clear. It's something we brought up last week, where you have OPEC now. Everybody now, it's like pumping more. They want to pump more oil. Russia wants to pump more oil. OPEC wants to do it. And I asked a question last week. Are they doing that in order to hurt American manufacturing of fossil fuels?
Sure.
A couple of my buddies in the oil industry said, if it gets much lower, we're going to have to start shutting down.
Yeah. You bring down the cost.
If oil gets
barrel,
much lower, we're going to have to stop. Yep. And so I asked that question, is that because I didn't see anybody else discussing that. Right. And I went, if they're opening up, and I think OPEC tripled what they were going to do?
They pledged that. I don't know if production is there yet.
Right, to triple. And I asked that question. Are they doing that in order to hurt? Because if you lower the price low enough, they believe that they can hurt American manufacturing of oil and natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw that from my oil friends here in the last 48 hours, when it dropped under 60, they were saying, if this keeps on dropping, expect a lot of layoffs in the oil business.
Mm-hmm.
And this is West Texas, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about.
Right. There are some firms that can go down below $50 a barrel, but you're just barely breaking even. It just depends on the firm. But you're going to start seeing layoffs pretty soon.
Yeah. So I found it interesting that they were concerned that they were concerned about it. But that's our only goal is for Republicans to win. And the fact is, we know. I know that the White House is putting out their political rhetoric to hold on to the base. The base is not what's going to have you win in 26. We've just seen it. Scott Jennings talked about it. The low propensity voter out there, that the people that voted for Trump but won't vote for Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to have independence in order to do it. You can sell the vast majority of what you believe to the American public and to independents, and Republicans can win. If the economy hurts and prices go up, that's the number one issue right now, that the border has been settled.
Yeah, right.
That's our only concern. Our only concern is not allowing Democrats in power, which is why I know the question I asked was unfair the other day, because it's not, either or, but in a way it could be. Is trade that big of a problem over Democrats getting power again?
Right. Well, I mean, they I think it was Navarro that went off on Vietnam and the outsourcing from China to Vietnam. We've talked about before. But he talked about it. He said, well, but the intellectual property rights are a thing. And I thought, well, there are points that they brought up in passing, like with China, which includes Vietnam because they outsourced to Vietnam. So they're part of intellectual property rights theft. Navarro brought that up, and I thought, what's going on at the moment, it's a snapshot, and this is Wall Street Journal, they seem to be open to negotiations with everybody but China. I thought, well, wait a minute. Are we back to what we said they should do? But this should have started at the beginning.
Right.
You work a deal, you don't have to do anything. Get everybody to the table, then you turn around to China and say, we're going to choke you out. Is that where this thing is headed? Yeah. The markets right now have confidence deals are going to be made, and they're okay with China having tariffs on them. So, something we've said.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Trump administration getting some wins from the courts. We'll get to that coming up, plus more on the economy. And one of my favorite stories, AOC flies first class to Bernie Sanders' Fight Oligarchy rally.
Fighting for justice, one mimosa at a time.
We'll get to that and more.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Hey, I like what you were telling me during the break there about that CNBC story, that how that got out there, because I find these things fascinating. When the media puts out something that isn't true, how does that happen? Well, and the CNBC story about Trump was going to put a 90-day pause on the tariffs, which then caused $2.2 trillion difference.
2.4, yeah.
2.4 in 10 minutes.
A massive jump within 10 minutes. And it actually started on X. A couple of accounts had posted on around 10 a.m. I was watching as all this happened. Hassett, that would be Kevin Hassett, the director of National Economic Council. Hassett, Trump is considering a 90-day pause in tariffs for all countries except China. That got reposted by a couple of other accounts. CNBC went to work on the story. And the way by the way, there's a Walter Bloomberg account that has nothing to do with Bloomberg, who also posted the account. Also, Danny Wall Street Journal posted. No, it's so he was one of those that posted it.
Danny Wall Street
Journal. Ron CNBC. And Barry Fox Business.
Barry
Fox Business. So that's actually where I saw it. Somebody that I follow reposted the Walter Bloomberg account. And when I saw Walter, I thought, well, first of all, that's not Bloomberg. And I had just been watching the markets a few minutes before, and they were very much on the downside. And it said, look at this pop. And I thought, oh, this must be from a couple of weeks ago. Somebody's reposting something from, no.
Yeah.
It's a new post. So then CNBC gets involved, and it was gaining basically this story from social media, these posts were gaining steam, according to the Wall Street Journal, with major outlets. A CNBC anchor read the news live on the air around 10:15 a.m. Eastern before warning viewers that, quote, we'll try and source that exactly where that came from. By the way,
wow.
Wouldn't you source it before you said it on the air? Barry? As word began to swirl, this is the Wall Street Journal again, as word began to swirl on X of the pause in the markets reacted, CNBC employees were chasing the news after some initial chatter internally. They ran into each other in the hallway. What's internal chatter? One employee mistakenly thought that the pause was confirmed. One employee, that's all it takes. And put it into a chyron, that would be graphics, a banner headline that runs across the bottom of the screen. According to a person familiar with the matter, by 10:18, CNBC ran a chyron with no attribution. Quote, Hassett. Again, that would be economic advisor. Trump is considering a 90-day pause in tariffs for all countries except China, end quote. At 10:20, Reuters, Billy Reuters, sent the same news over its wires, attributing it to CNBC. Quote, as we were chasing the news of the market moves in real time, we aired unconfirmed information in a banner. Our reporters quickly made a correction on air, end quote, a CNBC spokeswoman said. Reuters had to go on to make a similar correction, which ends with Reuters has withdrawn the incorrect report and regrets its error. How does it get to the... I know what X is all about. I know how social media works, which is why I didn't buy it to begin with. Because here's the thing. Wait just a few minutes, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you wait for a few minutes, then you and I do this, all right? So we'll look at something, and CNBC runs it. CNBC, though, runs it without attribution. One employee mistakenly thought it was confirmed, according to the Wall Street Journal. That's all it takes? You don't get a quote from Hassett yourself?
Or you don't have. Well, what got me is where they said we're going to check. Just they didn't source it themselves.
Before
they didn't know
you've
got to source it yourself.
Don't even mention anything that's only on social media before you call your sources at the White House and say, "Hey, what's up?" Because it didn't take long. Because somebody finally decided to call the White House. Imagine that. And the White House said fake news. It was a $2.4 trillion pop before it was over.
I mean, a positive pop.
you know what it sounds like? It sounds like that. I just woke up one morning. There's a $14 million in my bank account. I just decided I'd go shopping. The bank said they regret the error. The man says he doesn't have any of the $14 million left.
I was at the car dealership and, just talking to people, and I just checked. And the last I checked, what was the stock market down at that point? 1,400, something like that? Or what?
Early, now before this, or?
Before everything happened, yeah. What was it? I forgot.
Yeah, it was, I forget.
Or was it 800?
It was
800.
No, it was down further than that.
Okay.
It bounced between 11, yeah.
Okay. Well,
because that was about 9, because it was about 9 o'clock our time.
Well, that's what I saw, and all of a sudden.
It was early in the market, in the trading day.
I check a little time after. Yeah, well, I was there early at the dealership. I check it. It's like, what the hell's going on? I thought maybe I had hit it where I was looking at something from 3 weeks ago, just like you were saying.
Right.
Because I was like, how the heck did this drop? And then I went, and there was all over X. Mm-hmm. President to put 90-day pause. I went, oh, that's the reason. And then I scrolled down, fake news from the White House.
Fake news.
And then I see it going in the other direction.
Well,
and I thought the same as you. I went, this is a roller coaster ride.
By the way, as of right now, at the time that they posted this story at the Wall Street Journal, at least, and I haven't seen anywhere else where they have found the actual source of where this actually began. Because I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. Somebody floating a fake leak from the White House, somebody on social media just deciding they're going to make some news. A traitor, by the way, deciding they're going to, get involved and try and make a little bank before the end of the day.
Trader, not traitor.
Yeah, not traitor. Trader.
Anybody check with Mike Waltz's office for the leak?
Exactly. Could have been somebody at the Atlantic. I don't know, but that's how does I know how social media works. It boggles my mind of how something like that gets out there because here's the thing, knowing how ultra sensitive the markets are right now and how they react to every single comment by the president, by Navarro, by anybody from the administration on trade, there is a very quick reaction to it. That's why I said earlier in the first hour, I was saying, all right, as of right now, the market is leaning towards believing that some deals might be able to be made with all the countries except China. And it looks like, if that's the case, that it looks like they're okay with some tariffs on China, and we'll see how far that goes. The end of the trading day with, the Dow down 349 and basically NASDAQ and S&P were basically even. That looks like a plateau to me, that basically the market's saying, okay, we're going to stand here on this ledge of the cliff before we jump even further down and wait to see what happens next. So, which is a good thing because...
And it's happening in foreign markets, too.
Right. And so if that is, again...
Yeah, all the Asian markets are up.
Yeah. If there is belief that, because there's, the deal, there could be a deal with Japan, there could be a deal with Vietnam. We don't know what that looks like. All of these conversations saying we're talking to these other nations, and China's basically throwing down their own gauntlet. Xi wants this to go all the way to the bitter end. And we'll see how far that goes. But right now, the market believes that some deals may be in the works. Oh, another thing, too. Was it Navarro or Lutnick? I think it was Lutnick. What he said on Sunday morning on Face the Nation, he said these tariffs would go on for days, even weeks. And I thought, wait. You're not saying forever.
Yeah.
You just admitted there are deals to be made. You didn't say months. You didn't say, no, this is permanent policy. You said days, even weeks. Well, I think there was some reevaluation of his comments maybe by some yesterday, but I think the bigger driver is the fact that the administration has really keyed in on, and you saw it, Benjamin Netanyahu, the trade with Israel. The question is, they're not going to get trade balance. They're not going to get to a zero deficit. So what will be the threshold to get them their victory lap on these deals? I can't tell you. I don't know. And we may not know. We may not know for years, because if you think about it may not be, it's not going to be like USMCA where we can line it out and, okay, this is the deal, this is the agreement. there are other things. There are so many details that go into situations like this and these negotiations. We may have to look back on trade a few years down the road with any of these countries, any one of these nations individually, to see if that, how much of a difference there is in the trade imbalance, if any. So we may never know, which means politically you can take the victory lap right now because it may be years before it's known. And your evaluation versus the media's evaluation on that may be light years apart anyway. So, again, you get to take a victory lap. I don't know I have no idea where this is going to go. Nobody does. But I think the market right now is saying, at least we're hearing something about conversations and negotiations.
Well, I think the market probably responded to the fact of, whether they're actually serious negotiations or not doesn't matter.
Right.
It's a fact that it's being said, negotiations. I think the market was looking for something to calm them down. And, we now know what the end goal is. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a good end goal or an impossible end goal doesn't matter. We now know what it is. Everybody knows what it is, what the end goal is, even if it's impossible to meet. And you now know, as you just mentioned, that they're talking about the fact that this isn't permanent. They're looking to strike deals. Well, and that's not what they were saying last Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. They were saying no negotiations. This is the way it's going to be. So they've evolved from that point.
And Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, is actually leading negotiations with Japan. So Trump sitting with Netanyahu, because it's, you may think, all right, Israel, not a huge trade partner. It doesn't matter. The fact that they're having conversations, they're talking about trade openly, and Bessent, with the negotiations with Japan, that's what the market looks at and says, okay.
Well, the Israel one, I'm being serious about this. That's the one that you want, because you can easily even trade by selling them $7.4 billion.
Bibi's got to love it.
In United States weaponry.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one country that would say, for God's sakes, we'd love to even up.
We'll give you a surplus.
We'll give you a surplus. We'll give you a surplus. Sell us $10 billion
exactly
of weaponry.
Right.
And that evens. You guys have a trade surplus with us. You can use us as an example.
Right. And Bibi gets to say, and he did say it, he said, all the other nations should follow suit. This is the right thing to do. So, and we get some really great weapons.
I'm serious. If you're going to do it, start with Israel.
Yeah.
See, okay, we had that, but now Israel has agreed to buy $10 billion in U.S. weaponry.
Exactly.
The left will go crazy.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Right. Yep.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF. Fuel Power Max.
Uncompensated detention at docks frustrates drivers of all stripes. If you're an owner-operator, you have at least some control over the matter. Make the subject a standard part of your rate and/or contract negotiations on the front end. You can use your own numbers to calculate an hourly rate to compensate for lost income opportunity, as well as fixed costs, which don't stop when the truck stops. Those two elements of a fair detention rate were deemed appropriate by most of Overdrive's audience almost a decade ago. We've used income, fixed costs, and miles average of our owner-operator business services from ATBS's clients to compute an average $64 an hour detention rate then. And 10 years later, the figure is $83 an hour. Use your own numbers to calculate your rate. A simple conversation with any broker or shipper or your carrier if you're leased about what you're putting in the rate might yield results you don't expect. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, coming up following the bottom of the hour, a victory, at least a temporary victory, Well, actually, it looks like it's a more than a temporary victory that has the potential to be a permanent victory over the Democrats shopping for judges.
Right.
Judge shopping. And as they say that the Supreme Court requires that it be in the jurisdiction, that it just can't be any district judge.
Right.
The district judge has to be in the jurisdiction where something is going to happen. We'll get to that coming up here.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. All right, in a 5-4 vote, the Supreme Court of the United States declined to address the challengers' contention that they are not covered by the 18th century law on which Trump relied in issuing the order for the removal of non-citizens who are designated as members of a Venezuelan gang. They said that the challengers' lawsuit must be brought in Texas, where they are being held, rather in Washington, D.C. The court explained the unsigned 4-page opinion. I'm getting this from SCOTUS blog. By the way, great reference, SCOTUS blog.
Oh, yeah.
And
Amy Howe does a really great job. Yeah.
The unsigned 4-page opinion emphasized that although courts have a limited role in reviewing claims under that law, the plaintiffs and others detained under the law are entitled to notice and an opportunity to challenge their removal. Now, that's fascinating because, as she mentions here, the 1798 law, at the center of the case is the Alien Enemies Act, which allows the president to detain or deport citizens of an enemy nation without a hearing or any other review by the court if 2 things occur. Congress declares war, or there is an invasion or predatory incursion. The law has only been invoked 3 times during the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. So the law clearly states that under those 2 circumstances that you can detain or deport citizens of an enemy nation without a hearing or other review by the court. Are they saying that this does not fit invasion or predatory incursion or a declared war?
I think what they're saying is each of them has a right to challenge whether their behavior fits that definition.
Or their circumstance.
Their individual behavior and circumstance, does it fit that definition?
Well, actually, it doesn't, from what I can see, it doesn't bring up their behavior. It's simply whether they're in a country that is viewed as an enemy or they're part of an invasion or a predatory incursion.
Well, but that would be their behavior. If they fit under, that definition,
right? But
by being here, by crossing the border or staying over, or what it might be. But my point would be: is Venezuela considered an enemy nation? Is that what they're considering? Before you get to their behavior, it has to fit that circumstance of, is it an enemy nation? Is that what they're saying? And I don't know. I'm asking the question. Well, that and also the cartels and, being deemed the enemy and terrorist groups now. And so does that fall under that? So there could be a number of people that fall under that. But I think what they're saying here is that each individual has the right to go before the court in order to have that legally qualified. And it's really about, in this case, the decision by the court was about what the jurisdiction is of the court.
Well, no, you make a case there that if the gang is considered a
Terrorist
group,
Mm-hmm. They're an enemy at that point.
then at that point they're an enemy of the United States at that particular point. But the law states, because on one hand the court is saying that even though courts have a limited role, the plaintiffs and others detained under the law are entitled to notice and an opportunity to challenge their removal. Well, the law, the way they state it, doesn't say that if you fit these two things, you don't need a hearing or any review by the court. That's what I don't get. That's the big question mark that I have
because
in there.
I guess my question, too, would be, all right, someone is detained and they're actually not a member of the gang, but they were associated with them, right? And they want their moment before the court to say, I'm not a member of the gang. I don't belong to this organization deemed an enemy of the United States. And so I guess it's to challenge whether or not it applies in each of these individual cases. And then the Supreme Court said yesterday it really is about jurisdiction. That's what Kavanaugh's note was. It was about, because these individuals who were challenging here, these challengers were detained in Texas. Right. And that's where they should be in court.
And that's actually to me, that's the biggest win for the administration.
Right.
Is that the Supreme Court's come out and said, you can't be judge shopping like this.
Exactly.
How will that affect other cases? And I know the Department of Justice immediately is using that to say, well, all these other cases where they're judge shopping, if it doesn't happen in their district, they can't.
Right.
They can't be involved in this.
Right.
I would like somebody's got to clarify, the Supreme Court to clarify then when can you detain and deport citizens without a hearing or other review if you're saying that everybody should have an opportunity for review.
Right.
If the law states that they don't, how are you justifying that? That would be the question that I would have.
Well, here's Kavanaugh's note from Amy Howe's piece at SCOTUS blog. Kavanaugh wrote in a brief concurring opinion in which he emphasized that the court's disagreement is not over whether the detainees receive judicial review of their transfers. All 9 members of the court agree that judicial review is available. The only question is, he concluded, is where that judicial review should occur.
Okay, then he's not saying judicial review is required. He's simply saying it's available. And this is where you got to parse words when you're talking about a legal decision, right? Well, really, I mean, again, it's just a temporary. This made it so they don't have to bring. They're not under contempt of court now for not bringing the person back, and that judge is out of it.
Right.
So that judge, the contempt of court is because remember they were talking about, will someone go to jail in the Trump administration, for contempt of court?
Right.
If that judge has no jurisdiction, then it's gone.
Yeah.
And that's really the big victory is the judge shopping. That's it.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to, I mean, if El Salvador sends him back, he's going to be sent out of the country again.
Amy Howe also writes, the court made clear that, as the government agrees, the plaintiffs, as well as others who may be detained or removed under the AEA, are entitled to be notified that they are subject to removal under the Act. Moreover, the court added, addressing an argument made by lawyers for the plaintiffs during oral arguments in the lower courts, the government must provide that notice, quote, within a reasonable time and in such a manner as will allow them to actually seek habeas relief in the proper venue before such removal occurs. So is that written into that act? Part of it that we don't have in front of us? That's what I would ask.
That would be the question. That would be the next question.
Yeah. Could be.
All right, more research.
That's why we count on people like Margot Cleveland, Amy Howe,
Yeah, I know.
Andrew McCarthy. Always interesting to look at this. We know that the president has the power, has the authority. The question is, what is the process? And I think that's what the court was saying here. There is a process, and that process does not include judge shopping.
I see. I have no doubt that under a Republican administration, they will all be forced out of the country, even if there is judicial review. They'll be gone.
Right.
There's no way they're. Right. You notice I said under a Republican administration.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Under a Democrat administration, who knows? We're not going to pay attention to the law. We don't care.
Right.
But yeah, that's the big win. You can't go judge shopping and say, well, this thing happened in Texas. Let's go to a judge in Oregon.
Yeah, let's go find a friendly judge who will
find a friendly judge.
Give us what we want.
It's got to be a judge in that particular district where
they're being detained.
The event takes place. So everybody now will be detained in Texas or Florida.
Exactly. Well, I mean, if you look at the border states, at least. Texas, massive amount of activity. Arizona. California is still building sanctuary policy, so my gosh, who knows what happens there. But a lot of this will happen. The thing about the cartels is they battle over the the territory that is I-35. That runs, the artery that runs up the center of the nation for drug distribution. So when it comes to cartels out of Mexico, that's a big deal. So Texas is a big focus in that regard. But, we'll see where this goes. I don't expect the Trump administration to let up at all. This was something that one of the many things that President Trump wanted to get to the Supreme Court for this reason.
And we had said this. A lot of these things were done to get it up to the Supreme Court to solve major problems in the judicial system. And that's one of the problems is the judge shopping and the power given to district courts. And as we explained before, and we had, I think we had put the Margot Cleveland thing, we had put it on X, where she had said, look, these are supposed to be the trial people for local trial. Somebody breaks federal law in your district, you're the judge that, you're over the trial.
Yeah.
But your role is not to sit there and say, this happened in Texas, okay, I'm going to put a nationwide injunction. That's not your job. And it seems like the Supreme Court has made that clear. If something happens in your jurisdiction, yes. But if it's outside your jurisdiction, you don't get to do it.
Right.
Which is wonderful. And it would not have happened if Trump hadn't challenged it.
Right. Exactly.
Good Trump.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a win. I think long term on this kind of activity, there's going to be continued wins. You'll probably see a few more cases come through.
There was another one on the DEI cases where the court said, nope, you can.
Yep.
You can let people go. You can, and so when you look at the power again of the executive branch, this is where it's absolutely clear. There are things like you can look at the tariffs and say the president's authority to do what he's doing in the tariffs comes from the fact that Congress has given him that authority.
Right.
Now, we talked about that one lawsuit that's being filed, but the fact is that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Congress said, okay, you can do this. When it comes to, I know you have the 1798 law, which they're following, but when it comes to illegal immigration, that is solely the power. Okay, maybe judicial review in cases just to make sure that you're not an American citizen being deported.
Right.
But anybody can be deported.
Right.
And everybody should be deported who's not an American citizen.
Right.
And the vast majority of Americans agree with that.
Right.
And this guy that's in the El Salvador prison, who knows what's going to happen, but he was no angel.
Right. Yeah. I think, again, these activist judges, they know they're ultimately going to lose. It doesn't matter. You throw out as many road spikes as you can.
Yeah, they wanted to delay it.
Yep.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks for being here. Very quickly to Gary in Pennsylvania. Gary, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi.
Hey, how you guys doing? Great show, man. Great
Thanks.
show. I love listening to you.
Thanks.
I wanted to talk about the president has a right to deport somebody if we're at war with the nation or predatory invasion. Mm-hmm. So if a person comes into this country illegally, isn't that an invasion?
Yeah, the question wasn't morally whether it's an invasion or a predatory occurrence.
Gary.
It's whether it is legally considered that, and whether you have to be an enemy nation or an enemy of the United States to make that invasion or predatory invasion.
And if that person fits that profile of all of those conditions are of that case, yes.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, as we talk about 2028, after some polls had shown him as one of the top candidates for the Democratic presidential nomination, ESPN host Stephen A. Smith denied that he would be a candidate for office. He might be reversing his course. While speaking at the National Association of Broadcasters show in Las Vegas, he said, "I have no desire to do it." He said about seeking office for the presidency, "I'm living a pretty good life right now. Life's been good. The last thing I would want to do is involve myself in politics. I've always perceived politicians as being professional beggars." I don't say that derogatorily or anything like that. It's just the reality. You've always got to have your hand out for something. People always need favors in return. I'm not that guy. I could never see myself as a politician. Then he revealed that he has been courted in recent weeks to reconsider his stance. Oh. Over the last few weeks, I've had no choice but to get more serious about it. I've been approached by people on Capitol Hill. I've been approached by people who are elected officials in office, whether it's governors or mayors or what have you. People have legitimately, seriously asked me about it. I have no desire to be a politician, but I decided that I'm no longer going to close that door.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to keep my options open. I'm going to entertain the possibility, if it comes in late 2026, 2027, where I look at this country and I think it's an absolute mess and there's a legitimate reason to believe that I indeed have a legitimate shot to win the presidency of the United States, I am not going to rule it out. Now, the most important part of this whole thing is the interview was done by McVeigh Media President Mike McVeigh.
Our former boss, and still today, good friend.
One of the biggest boosters of our show.
I love Mike. I love Mike. And he
Mike
was
one of the biggest boosters of Red Eye.
When he was here at Westwood One, such a fan, such a great cheerleader, just stood behind us, had great confidence in us. We're still not sure why. And supported. Don't
let anybody know.
Don't tell him. Don't tell him. But no, he had literally from day one. Remember the first meeting? Goes back to 2011.
Yeah.
And just had, such a positive vibe and attitude toward us, and we couldn't be more grateful. And he was on stage speaking with Stephen A. Smith in Las Vegas yesterday at the NAB, National Association of Broadcasters, and it's a big deal. Mike McVeigh is a big deal. And so we've seen it before. It still sounds like Stephen A. Smith really doesn't want to do it, but he's looking at it as, he's walking, he's saying he's not going to buy the house, but he's walking through all the rooms in the house. And we'll see where that goes, because you and I have both been asked on different levels to run for office. I've never been asked to run for president. We've had our listeners, our very kind listeners, say a couple of times, you guys should be president and vice president.
I had someone put out a feeler one time.
Yeah.
Not from Texas. I was living here.
Yeah.
It was in New York.
Yeah.
If I would ever consider running for Congress.
Right.
I went, absolutely not.
Well,
I have no idea.
I first had someone approach me about city council where I live, and then that same person years later running for Congress, and they had backing. And I said, I'm not your guy. I'm not your guy. And the backing actually came from someone who has a pretty strong brand in the marketplace, and there was, they were shopping around. They were looking for the right candidate who could espouse the views of conservatives and that kind of thing. And I spent some time on the phone with them, and as a dear friend of mine, and I told her, I said, no, I'm not the guy. I don't have any interest in doing that. I think what we do here in the conversation of it, being in the thick of the conversation every day, has a great value. And I don't know, Stephen A. Smith isn't going to listen to me, but I would say this. What I've witnessed, and I think we've all witnessed, anybody who's paying attention to these kind of scenarios where someone gets all of a sudden pulled in, and then they run, and then they win, and then they become very different, right? They're not the same, they're not going to do the rants that they have done. They're going to do rants, but they're going to have to consider who's behind them, the party that they serve, what the party wants out of them. It's not just about you.
Well, and you do have to take definitive opinions.
Yeah.
You have to be, well, the Democrats didn't last time, but they may have to in 2028 actually tell you what they believe.
Well, if you look at Stephen A. Smith, he's ranted against the left on some of the things they've done wrong.
Yeah.
Well, the mob won't let you get away with that
right.
if you're in office. And I guess that depends on where you serve, and how you serve. And, if you're talking about running for president, well, you got to get there, and there's got to be a lot of money involved in getting you there. My gosh, and just putting an exploratory committee together, you're talking about a massive, massive task. I'm not saying he can't do it, but I don't know that he would want to.
Yeah, Mine was very quick. It was just a quick email. Hey, just your name came up. Would you ever? No.
Yeah. My conversation was, I
didn't even have a conversation. That was it.
My conversation was, and it was, again, a dear friend of my wife and I were on vacation. We were heading to our destination and talking to this friend of ours. And, the consideration of what, that would be and everything else. And I said, no. I mean, it was an instant no, but it was also interesting being part of the conversation of who do you get, right? Who serves and how do they serve and why do they serve? We've seen this before where celebrities have been courted. Oprah was always going to run.
Michelle Obama was always going to run.
Matthew McConaughey was always going to run.
Oh, Matthew McConaughey. That's right. We can't count Michelle Obama because she was the first lady. So
exactly.
So you have to go Matthew McConaughey. That was great, wasn't it?
And we hear this. I think George Clooney recently was asked.
Yeah.
And I think he's been asked before. Not the first time Reagan was an actor. But Reagan also espoused views very clearly, and to your earlier point, laid down his opinions very clearly for a number of years, and then became governor of California, that small thing, and then ran for president. So, there was a track record of being able to win elections.
I look at it. I look at it. Somebody like Stephen A. Smith. Again, you can complain whatever, but compare him to Mark Cuban, because remember, people talked about Mark Cuban running for president.
Yeah.
Mark Cuban can't even answer the radical transgender movement thing. He's trying to ride the fine line there, as we played the audio yesterday, and it's ridiculous.
Well, he can't even answer straight the question about his own team's trade of looping. If you can't do that and that's your job, the answer is no.
That's the one thing when you have to have definitive opinions. And Cuban can't sit there and say, well, it shouldn't be a national issue. They made it. And when he said they, it sounded like he was saying Republicans made it a national issue. No. Democrats, Obama made it a national issue by having his Department of Justice and Department of Education change the definition of a woman in Title IX.
Right. Yeah. And so those are the things it's different on a debate stage than it is having a rant on television.
Oh, it's
or on a podcast.
Different ball game. For me, it would be I have no interest in doing it because I don't wish to do it. I love doing what I'm doing, and it's that simple. I mean, it's and I would rather do this because I sign my name to every opinion that I have. I don't have to agree with anybody else.
Right.
And to me, that's the fun of being able to do this.
Well, I just can't imagine having to go along with a party if the party's moving in a direction that I disagree with. I mean, and, I joked recently, I'd be so libertarian. I'd be more libertarian than Rand Paul and Ron Paul put together. In fact, I'd be so libertarian, I'd vote no on the bills that I introduced.
Eric is so libertarian, he would vote to remove himself from government.
Right. Exactly. I'm Eric Harley, and I approve this message. It isn't, to me, you get into that fray. I look at people like Chip Roy, who I think is doing, a good job at serving his district.
And how frustrating it is.
And it just looks at times, like it's not healthy for the individual, because, and God bless them for doing it. But that's a different type of individual doing a different type of work than I would want to do, because you get into the chaos that is. I mean, if you were talking about the House, and in my case they were, but I'm not. Again, I don't have any interest in getting into that chaos, knowing that it would feel very quickly like I was spinning wheels. I don't believe I'm qualified. I believe I have a very strong opinion on a number of things, and I believe I would fight for those things. But I think ultimately I'm unelectable. In fact, for much of that reason.
Oh, I'd be totally unelectable.
You know, and that's it. It's I'm going to lay everything out there.
I forgot about that.
You know,
doesn't matter whether we want to run. It's our electability.
and that's the thing too. You know, I mean, the contrived ads where it shows you walking in the park and pointing to something over in the horizon. You know, Eric Harley believes in things and stuff. He also is born at an early age. He has decided. I mean, you know, to me, I'm having more and more of a problem just watching things on TV. Now it's kind of that same concern is bleeding over to YouTube when I'm thinking, you know, I mean, with all the thumbnails and the contrived thought is the idea of getting manipulating people into a behavior of, you know, clicking on this or clicking on that or acting this way or acting that way. Well, in politics, I mean, my gosh, it's like doing a play, a really horrible play that ends badly every time.
Well, I think it'd be pretty cool to see a commercial. There I am standing in the huge American flag behind me.
Yeah.
And the deep voice guy saying, Gary McNamara will save America.
Yeah.
Yeah. And me buying into that.
Right. Well, here's the thing, too. I don't want to have to go get fitted for a cape. Because in my head, I'm wearing a cape.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Talking about Congress. You saw that, again, the House is back in session, and Mike Johnson won.
Mm-hmm.
There's not going to be any proxies.
Right. Yeah.
Proxy voting.
Right.
Did you hear anything from Luna yesterday?
No. By the way,
what happened there?
Well, you know, Trump had something. He said something on the fly the other day about it in support of proxy voting. He said, I don't see what the big deal is. I don't know. I really don't. I did not see a lot of heat on that yesterday.
Nothing. She has the pin post from April 3rd. Thank you, Donald Trump, for supporting pro-family Congress.
Right. Yeah.
To be clear, this is something only to be used in an emergency to ensure that constituents are represented in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen.
Right.
She hasn't said a word. What happened?
Yeah.
When I saw that yesterday, I went, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, that's a good sign for Congress because it shows Johnson won.
Yeah. Right.
And so what was said to get people in line for a bunch of votes that are coming up where they can't lose anyone?
I don't know. Maybe there was that reckoning, that talk. We don't have a choice. Everybody has to be here. We can't lose one vote.
Yeah, but her argument for that would be, I could vote
proxy. I can vote proxy. That was the whole reason. But
right, but there's
if you're not going to win it, we got to show unity as a party.
Yeah, I wonder what in the world,
because they didn't have unity at the top of the party. Luna had Trump on her side.
Yeah. And that's why
what was the conversation between Trump and Johnson on that?
What in the world happened there?
Right.
And then there's nowhere that she commented on it on X.
Mm-hmm.
And she did post yesterday. I want to personally thank thank Chief Justice Roberts, who has just blocked a rogue judge from demanding that I return MS-13 terrorist. It was a parody thing.
Okay.
She posted a parody thing
Okay.
yesterday. I'm sorry, it was a parody.
All right.
From Trump that she posted.
Okay.
And then she had 3 hours ago, go Gators, because they won. Florida won the national championship.
Yeah.
And anything else? Let me just go down here as I'm going down here. 10 hours. No, I don't. No, don't see anything. She posted on it yesterday.
Yeah.
And she was loud on that last week.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, boom, nothing. So the first thing I thought, what in the world happened there? How did that change so quickly? It's a win for him. Because I think we were all saying, how are they going to resolve this one? This is not what you wanted the fighting over in the party. And the question we had is if this kind of fighting has happened, how will they ever get together?
Well,
on all the different...
And maybe that's the position of Luna. I'll save my battle for something else. I don't know.
Well, she was criticized last week for, bringing this thing up as there were a lot of fights ahead.
Right.
But, yeah, when Trump... That was the thing, too. When Trump backed her, what was it, just a couple days ago?
Yeah.
When he backed her, I went, okay, where is this going now? Because, in essence, Trump saying that challenged the leadership of Johnson at that point.
Exactly.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. It was funny because I just saw this headline here. Study finds liberals show less empathy to political opponents than conservatives do. And during the bottom of the hour, I was going through a number of audio cuts, and throughout the show I have, and I keep looking at Eric because we find we've got all the special services. We go to X, whatever, to find audio cuts for the show. And I found 2 audio cuts with liberals talking to conservatives. It's F this and F this and F that. I mean, I can't play any of them. If we were a podcast, just a podcast, but since we're on radio stations, that we can't do. But I find this study finds liberals show less empathy to political opponents than conservatives do. And that was right after I looked at you and said, Eric, I can't play this on the air.
Well,
and it was the woman talking to Byron Donalds down in Florida.
Yeah.
Just, F this and F that, to, I'm like, oh, man.
Well, and remember the audio cut we played last week? The girl saying, as soon as I found out he was a conservative, I hated him.
Yeah, exactly. In today's polarized political landscape, the ability to understand and empathize with those across the aisle has reached concerning lows. New research published in Personality and Social Psychology reveals that there's a problem. Liberals consistently showed less empathy towards their conservative peers than vice versa. President Joe Biden's inaugural call to stand in the other person's shoes highlighted empathy as crucial for healing national divisions, yet many people find it hard to feel for political opponents. Empathy, defined as sympathy for and understanding of another's suffering with the aim of reducing it, is widely seen as essential for improving intergroup relations, but tends to diminish when directed towards those outside one's political or social group. James Casey and colleagues conducted 4 pre-registered studies examining how political ideology shapes intergroup empathy, bias, and why such differences arise. The researchers recruited over 4,700 participants, roughly evenly split between liberals and conservatives from different online platforms. Study 1 involved 549 U.S. participants, while Study 2, 958 UK participants. Study 3 and Study 4 sampled 1,372 and 1,874 U.S. participants, respectively, with recruitment spanning both conservative and liberal administrations to account for political context. In each study, participants read a short scenario describing a person undergoing a mild hardship. Example, a sprained ankle. The person was identified as politically... Oh, my gosh. So it's
For example, a sprained ankle?
Injury. I mean, I'm trying to think, okay, how are you going to do this to find out empathy if you bring politics into it? Because a liberal's going to look at any conservative and say, you're Hitler. And, how do you have empathy for Hitler, right?
Right.
The person was identified as politically conservative, liberal, or neutral. Participants then rated their emotional response using several scales: concern, sympathy, perspective taking, the willingness to help, and avoidance. Mediating variables including perceptions of the target's morality, likability, similarity to the self, and in later studies, the perceived harm caused by the target's political group. In-group political power was also measured to assess whether the party in power influenced compassionate responses. Across all 4 studies, participants consistently showed lower empathy for political outgroup members than for in-group or neutral targets. However, this bias was not symmetrical. Liberals exhibited slightly less empathy for conservatives than conservatives showed for liberals. In Study 1, this was driven by liberals' stronger negative judgments of conservatives' morality and likability. Conservatives' responses remained relatively stable regardless of the target's political affiliation. Study 2 confirmed those findings in the UK sample, where British liberals also exhibited stronger bias against conservatives. Wow. Mediated by perceptions of morality, likability, and similarity. Study 3 demonstrated that even after the shift to a Democratic administration in the U.S., liberals continued to judge conservatives as more harmful and immoral, leading to reduced empathy. Study 4 further validated this pattern with a larger sample, strengthening the evidence for the link between perceived group harm and diminished empathy. So there you go.
No empathy for the devil, I guess.
One limitation is the findings rely on hypothetical scenarios rather than real-world interactions. For example, but they used a sprained ankle. If someone had a sprained ankle and fell over, would you feel empathy for them if you knew what their politics were?
Right. Well, because here's the thing. You have to make it seem like it's more serious than it is. Like when LeBron does it, and you just lay on the ground going, ow, ow, make America great again, ow.
What you're saying, if somebody is hurt and I knew that they were liberal, would that affect me in any way? Would it affect you in any way?
No.
Remember, they're saying most conservatives it didn't. No. Liberals it did.
No,
it wouldn't. I would just.
It's a person that needs help,
right? I told you about, and I guess I can repeat it because I only told it once. Well, I mean, I told the conclusion of it. I have a neighbor that doesn't live right across the street from me, but lives on my street and very friendly with them. And it goes back to, this goes back maybe when you and I, maybe 2007, 2008, because I was gone and I came back on 4th of July. and they live a couple doors down, but on the other side of the street, they were having like a street party. So I drove my car down, but they were, into the street, and I didn't care. Because 4th of July, we did that when we were kids. Pull into my driveway, go to get my mail, and my neighbor's like, come on, come over, come here. And they start pointing to these two guys saying, that's Gary McNamara, that's Gary McNamara. And I'm like, oh, no, here we go.
Yeah.
And they just love the show. This is before we were even, before we were Red Eye.
Mm-hmm.
And they just love the show. And they were somehow related to the wife. Well, this past September, before the election, she put on Facebook, if anybody's going to vote for Trump, unfriend me right now. Just went crazy. So, hey, I always do what a woman tells me. So I unfriended her. And so I checked it a month later, even before the election, and she had removed the post. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But, I mean, we really never communicated anyway. But I've always been friendly with them. And so on Election Day, well, the week before Election Day, all her signs went up all over the place, all of her signs. Mm-hmm. It's, Harris is whatever, and Harris, Biden, whoever. And when I came home that morning after the election, about 5:30, all the signs were down. She'd taken them down overnight.
Yeah.
I went, whoa. So then I was always wondering about my next door neighbor who lives right next to me, because they were real friendly. He was real friendly with them. But in his driveway, he's got a bunch of, there's a bunch of cars. So I couldn't see if he had any political signs up. And normally I never saw political signs that he had up. Well, this goes to December. This is the month after the election. All of his cars are out of the driveway because his kids have, cars. And I look, and there's a Trump sign, big Trump sign that faces right towards her house.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, my God, this is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it was just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I just hadn't seen him. And then nice weather started coming, so you're out doing lawn work, and I saw him. I went, oh, come here. I got to ask you this question. I said, how are you getting along with our neighbor? I know you guys were good friends, but I got to tell you, I saw your Trump sign up there, and after she said in September, anybody who's not a friend of mine or anybody who's voting for Trump, unfriend me now. A big smile came on his face. He said, yeah, I put it up because of her. And I said, how is it? And he goes, oh, it's hurt our friendship. Because, with the husband I'm still friends with, whatever. And we're social, but we got into an argument one time, and he said, I realized this is not the situation I want to be in, because she just is nuts. Absolutely furious and livid. And he's a good guy. And he said, yeah, he goes, look, he said, I agree with the majority. Like most people that I find, I agree with the majority of what Trump does. And when I don't agree with him, I tell, I'll make it known I don't agree with him. I'll make it known when I agree with him. I said, yeah, me too. Same thing. I'm a conservative. He goes, yes, so am I. And so, I mean, it was real. And he knows I'm on the radio and everything and a conservative. So, I mean, I didn't have to go too hard on that. I said, my job. He goes, yeah. But it was just so funny. It's just so funny. But she just lost it completely. And then I got a long friend, a guy I've known since I was a club DJ. And he was a bartender. But he was a great musician. Actually had an album cut. In fact, I can say this. Gary Malaber from the Steve Miller Band, the drummer, was in his band. But his band was, pretty popular, but he was still local and working, as a bartender. We became great friends. Well, he still plays, became a Nashville songwriter, also involved in other businesses. And he put out the same thing. If you voted for Trump, unfriend me now. So I did.
Yeah.
And
I had a friend years ago, a neighbor directly across the street, who put a piece of paper, a big sheet, the big sheet paper that covers the entire door, and wrote on it, this is 2016, Republicans should vote for Hillary. She'll do less damage than Trump, exclamation point. Didn't even try to make it look nice. And I didn't have any beef with this neighbor directly across the street. And I say that because his door was recessed into the porch. It was meant directly for me. Because if you're driving by the house, you would have to really work to see that. But I could see it because it's directly across from me. I didn't have any concern there. And ultimately, he won. A few days after the election, my neighbor took that sign down. He never put a Hillary sign in his yard. And after that, he and his wife, he worked from home. She was retiring, and they were moving to New Mexico, and they put their house on the market. And I said, hey, see that you're moving. I said, hope everything's okay. Oh, yeah, my wife is retiring, and I'm going to continue to work from home. We're moving to New Mexico. I said, best of luck. You got a great house. And he goes, well, let me show you. And then he shows me in the house on the inside and all the work that they had done. Beautiful. Did a beautiful job. Great job. Things that I would have done. And I said, oh, my gosh. And then I remember the day when it sold. I pulled up. He was out front, and he was taking the sign down, the for sale sign down from the realtor. And I said, you got a deal. He goes, yes. And it was only on the market for like 3 days. I said, oh, my gosh. And I was so happy for him. Genuinely happy for him. Because he's a neighbor. It's the way that I am. I'm not going to change.
Same with me. I would never change. It wouldn't bother. I don't care what your politics are if you're hurt.
Yeah. I'm going to help you any way I can.
The one thing I always wondered is because, like, with Memorial Day coming up and then 4th of July, and even when I put my Christmas lights up now, I have this huge electric American flag I put in the window. Mm-hmm. I think all my flags might be upsetting her.
Yeah. Don't you dare buy a Tesla.
Stars and Stripe Tesla. 866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. The pro-murder leftists. Some polling numbers out there. You saw Politico's article, right?
Yeah.
Mangione.
Wow. Yeah.
How how Republicans will lose young people by the Justice Department wanting the death penalty for him.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
This is where the left has gone. It's nuts.
It is insane.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, so we were talking about that. The survey that talked about compassion and how you feel compassion, empathy for example, that they did a study. If someone sprained their ankle and fell down, would you feel empathy for them? And if they were a different political party, if you knew that, or a different political narrative, if they were liberal and you were a conservative, conservatives really didn't change much. Their survey showed whether it was, so if you needed help, you needed help. Mm-hmm. Liberals did. Liberals had less empathy. And it goes right to this. Here we go. Rutgers University did this survey. A majority of self-identified leftists say it would be at least somewhat justified to murder Trump. Rutgers University Social Perception Lab along with the Network Research Institute, on Monday released results of a survey to assess support for political violence in the United States. The results found that political violence targeting Trump and Elon Musk is becoming increasingly normalized. In fact, 55% of those self-identified as left of center said murdering Trump would be at least somewhat justified. 48% said the same about murdering Elon Musk. Overall, 38%, because they were self-identified leftists, overall 38% said it was at least somewhat justified to murder Trump, and 31% said the same about Musk. Rutgers found that a broader assassination culture appears to be emerging within segments of the U.S. public on the extreme left. The findings signal a threat to political stability and public safety. The survey also found 39.8% of respondents said it is at least somewhat acceptable to destroy a Tesla dealership in protest. Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Well, from the side that doesn't value life from the beginning.
Oh, what did they call it? In Colorado where they were passing the bill? Oh man, what was the term they used for an aborted baby? It's like, what the hell?
Yeah. But I've said this for the longest time. Everything begins and ends with whether or not you value life from the beginning. And if you don't, then why would you care, right? Why would you mind if somebody you don't like? Look at the reaction to
averted births.
Averted births.
Yes, that's a new term for abortion.
Yeah,
averted births. Colorado Democrats said birth is more expensive than abortion, and they're calling abortions now averted births.
The assassination of Brian Thompson.
Well, that's what I have right here. I've got the audio here because, Pam Bondi was on Fox News and talked about it. And they talked about the Politico had an article that Trump will be losing Gen Z because they're going for the death penalty for Luigi Mangione. Because he committed first-degree murder.
Right.
We all saw it on film. He killed a healthcare CEO, and Politico's writing an article that there is so much sympathy for him. Here it is. Let's play this audio. I mean, this is where I have no words for this anymore. Here we go.
The death penalty this week, you announced that you want the prosecution to seek that with Luigi Mangione, accused of gunning down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in Midtown Manhattan. Politico reacted to that with this line: how Trump loses Gen Z. I was in an airport a couple of weeks ago with a young woman that had on a sweatshirt with his face on it, and he was portrayed as a religious icon. There was a halo, kind of like a saint. What's your take on how the younger generation sees him as a bit of a folk hero, and Politico's assessment that it may cost you politically?
Shannon, the president's directive was very clear. We are to seek the death penalty when possible. And, it hadn't been done in 4 years. I was a capital prosecutor. I tried death penalty cases throughout my career. If there was ever a death case, this is one. This guy is charged with hunting down a CEO, a father of two, a married man, hunting him down and executing him. Yeah, I feel like these young people have lost their way. I was receiving death threats for seeking the death penalty on someone who is charged with an execution of a CEO. We're going to continue to do the right thing. We're not going to be deterred by political motives. You know, I've seen a protester walking down the street here, free Luigi. I mean, this guy's charged with a violent crime, and we're going to seek the death penalty whenever possible.
But you, again, as she mentions, you see the response from the left and their support for Luigi, the guy who's accused of killing Brian Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
They see him as a folk hero.
Yep.
So, of course, this survey by, again, people on the far left, this is when you...
And by the way, I'll say more than the far left, because I've actually got emails from some of our listeners. Well, even though I understand it, even though I don't approve of it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean you understand it?
Well, AOC. You know, she's going out of her way to justify the murder. Yeah. When people have their claims denied, they see that as an act of violence.
Right.
And she knew nothing about Brian Thompson or anything else or the motive at that point behind the murder. It was just what Brian Thompson represented to them.
Yep.
So when we were talking earlier about having empathy for the right, oh my gosh, they're so light years away from empathy. They're to the point, some of them, of justifying murder.
Well, when you think about it, the worst crime that you can do, and that's why there's a death penalty that exists in many states and in the federal government, is, first-degree capital murder, mm-hmm. which is premeditated. This was completely and totally planned, as we know. It was planned out. That's the worst thing you can do is take somebody's life. Think about how warped our system of morality education has become in this country when you see the support for an assassin of a businessman who has broken no laws walking down the street. Think about the poll we just read you when it comes to Trump and Elon Musk. Yeah, it'd be somewhat justifiable to murder them.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I love it with the memes out there. We're protesting going after waste.
And by the way,
keep the waste in government.
There's no such thing when it comes to murder as somewhat justifiable. It's either yes or no.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a great point. Great point. That's how you squeeze. Well, I just said somewhat justifiable.
Right. Own it.
Eric, I just sort of want to half kill you.
Well, that's AOC.
It's somewhat justifiable.
AOC believes it's okay to murder a healthcare CEO on the street.
Let's call it what it is. I mean, they're doing this thing where somewhat. No, if you say somewhat, you mean justifiable.
It's either yes or no.
Right.
You don't halfway murder. It's murder. Yes or no.
I'm torn.
My vote, by the way, is no. Always no.
Well, that's because you work here at Red Eye Radio,
mm-hmm.
where we took a few years ago that strong stand
against murder.
Because we live in a society that isn't sure. I think that's where that came about, right?
Mm-hmm,
because of stories like this,
right?
Where we said, well, let's make sure people know we are anti-murder.
They're somewhat. There's no somewhat. Partially.
I only partially support murder.
Right.
Because if you say it's somewhat justifiable, what you're saying is that you justify part of the killing. What part?
Right. The taking the life part.
What part of it is? Well, I'm partly pro-murder. What part is that?
Yeah. In some ways, I support murder.
Right.
In what ways? My gosh.
I'm sorry. I know it's not funny, but it's so, the logic is so bizarre.
Well, because of the way that and these research companies, these call-out research companies, doing this, somewhat, there is no, it's yes or no. Answer the question, yes or no.
I'm only semi-pro murder. I'm not full. Don't accuse me of promoting murder.
Well, the person responsible for the murder isn't somewhat.
I'm only semi-supportive of murder. Not fully, only semi. How dare you judge me?
They're weak in so many ways. This is just one more example. And that weakness is also part of how dangerous it's becoming. Because when you can build that kind of consensus, ultimately, then we're no longer a nation of laws. If this were to keep growing in that direction, and God help us if it does.
Well, how the hell do you get to a point where, was it 51%? Was it of liberals believe it's somewhat justifiable, which means they believe it's justifiable to kill Trump, and
exactly.
48% for Elon Musk.
Right.
This is part of the mentality, though, of Serpent the other day.
Mm-hmm.
You better watch out if you're aligning yourself with Trump. They're going to get you after Trump's out of office.
Right.
The hell does that mean?
Right. No, this is exactly who they are. Iran is a threat, but there's a threat from within with this kind of mentality being in place, and it is solid. We've seen evidence of it. We don't need a survey, but this survey sums it up as to what many on the left believe and who they actually are.
And I know it's not even or, but that's why I even brought up the other day when I said, part of what you can look at, part of our concern is, when we look at the tariffs, we don't want Democrats to be in power because we know what they will do. We know, we've seen what they will do.
Mm-hmm.
They want to censor the media.
Yeah.
They want to go after their political opponents. It's the party that is pro-murder.
Yep.
By the polling that exists out there. And that's why I asked the question, what is worse? Slowly working on trade, getting to the point of losing the economy because of the tariffs and putting Democrats in power? What's worse? Our trade imbalance or Democrats getting in power? And that's to me, it's a legitimate question because we know what the Democrats will do if they get in power.
Oh, if they gain power again across the board, House, Senate, and White House.
Yeah.
I've been saying we're doomed for many years. It will be the understatement.
It can't be just 4 years.
No.
That is our concern and our only concern. We don't live in the bubble of today. We look and say, what about 6 months from now? What about a year from now? And I tell you, when Trump came out yesterday and said, well, yeah, it could take 2 years. It could take 3 years to get this all done. Well, if you have a down economy for that, you're out of office. Well, he's out anyway, but I mean, you lose Congress in the midterms. You lose this. This is the mentality that exists where these liberals that only vote Democrat believe murder is justifiable of their political opponents.
Right. And if they're willing to go that far and issuing, think about that, as respondents issuing their opinions on these high-profile individuals, the highest profile when it comes to a president, then what about you wanting to protect your daughter at a school? What about you who disagrees with them, or you who might wear a MAGA hat every once in a while? What about you who drives a Tesla and may not even vote? Either way.
Well, they're attacking Democrats.
Yep.
They don't care.
Yep. If you get in their way, they'll come after you. We've seen the mob do it. If this mentality is in play, exactly how dangerous is it?
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller. and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. In order to manage speed, you need to understand the 4 factors involved in stopping a vehicle. Perception distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time you see a hazard until your brain recognizes it. The perception time for an alert driver is approximately 3/4 of a second. Reaction distance is the distance a vehicle travels from the time your brain tells your foot to move from the accelerator until your foot hits the brake pedal. The average driver has a reaction time of 3/4 of a second. Brake lag distance also needs to be taken into account. When operating a vehicle with air brakes, it takes about half a second for the mechanical operation to take place. Finally, braking distance is the distance it takes a vehicle to stop once the brakes are applied. Braking distance is affected by the weight, length, and speed of the vehicle, as well as road condition. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Coming up, following the bottom of the hour, the House to look at passing the Senate bill, but there's problems. The Conservative Caucus. A couple of stories out there of Johnson and Mike Johnson and Trump whipping the House deficit hawks on the Senate budget bill that they'd like to pass before, I think they go on Easter vacation Thursday for 2 weeks. And they want this victory, but you've got the conservatives saying, you're not cutting. Well, this would be number 2 now. You have one more shot at cutting this year to let people know that what you're doing in Doge is actually going to be reflected in the budgets.
Right.
The CR, it was not. In this 10-year, framework budget, it is not. The next one will be the October 1st budget. That will be the one that Trump will come up with probably over the summer, which in Congress will look at it. Will they actually start cutting? Because the concern we've always said is all we still hear is Doge is cutting this and cutting that and cutting this. And then you see the budgets and you say, where are the cuts?
The Doge thing has been quiet for a number of days now.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're
and
right.
I wonder if they're trying to tame that so they can get enough support to get something through. I don't know. I really don't know. But if you told conservatives on the CR, hey, wait and do your fighting on cuts later, well, now we're getting to the later part.
Yep.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here this morning. Yeah, I just wonder. You made a great point. You said Doge has been awfully quiet the last couple of days, and you have to ask yourself: has there been a falling out?
Well,
between Trump and Elon Musk, since Elon Musk went after Navarro, and if you're going after Peter Navarro on the whole tariff situation, then you're going after Trump.
Oh yeah, and you're clearly disagreeing with the policies on tariffs. But I think beyond that too, something if you go back to the CR and during that time, I was saying there's mixed messages. You got Doge saying, "Here's what we're finding: $4 billion a day." Boom, 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 and a few of the GOPers in the House saying, well, hey, let's get that started. And then you can't get that done. And so then you're battling, basically, you're creating an internal battle, which you don't need to do. So something needs to happen. Well, the easiest thing to happen is to quiet down the messaging from Doge. Okay, you made your point. This is what you found. You did your interview with Brett Baer, and it's all out there. And now let's see if we can get something done on Capitol Hill. And the question is, what does that mean? Because if that were to be the case, I have no idea if that is. It could be just a coincidence. They're on to other things, or it could be all the above with the back and forth on tariffs. But you've got to get something done on Capitol Hill. And if you told those in the GOP, those fiscal conservatives, to go along on the CR, and then you can fight for what you want later, we're at that point now. This is the beginning of that later. You've moved on now, and they want to start fighting for things. I really wonder how this is going to go.
Let me just play this audio from Elon Musk here, where he talked about what he would like to see. Here we go.
I hope that I hope that the United States and Europe can establish a very close partnership. We obviously are. There's an alliance already, but I'm hopeful that there can be a very close relationship with America and Europe. And I'm hopeful, for example, with the tariffs, that at the end of the day, I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America. That would be that's what I hope occurs.
Now, by him saying that, that's not what the administration is saying.
No.
And so that's a problem there. And the other problem, as you mentioned, there were 3 opportunities now. And we had talked about when, all we heard from Doge, remember that, early on in Doge, we're cutting so much, you're going to be able to get a $5,000 check back.
Mm-hmm.
Then that disappeared.
Right.
Completely. We don't do that. Don't promise things that you can't deliver. And then we're told we got to the point probably, it was 3 weeks ago, we're cutting $4 billion a day right now, which ends up being $1.46 trillion a year. Well, you and I said, well, if that's actually the case and you're doing it and you've got that and nobody's being hurt, nobody's being denied a benefit because of it, well, then people are going to want to see it. Conservatives, Republicans are going to say, where is it in the budget? Why are there no cuts in the budget? Well, there's cuts in the budget, but we have more spending. The president said he wants to spend $1 trillion now, which is over $100 billion more on defense. May be necessary. I'm not arguing whether it's necessary or not. I'm saying, where are the cuts?
Right.
And that's what they're saying, right? The Republicans are saying in the House, or at least the conservatives are. President Donald Trump, this is from Politico, is pushing House Republicans to quickly adopt the Senate's new budget framework. And Speaker Mike Johnson says speed really matters, but fiscal hawks are not sold on the clock's ticking pitch. House GOP leaders plan to tee up a final vote midweek on the fiscal roadmap they need to adopt in order to draft and pass Trump's big, beautiful bill along party lines later this year. Deficit hawks irked that the Senate did not match their mandate of $2 trillion in spending cuts to balance out tax cuts. Now, that's $2 trillion over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be clear. And so if you're saying that you're cutting $1.46 trillion right now without hurting anybody, and that you can't even get to $200 billion a year, conservatives are going to be asking themselves, why can't we?
Right.
What is the problem? And that's the same thing that Rand Paul said. He goes, we're here all these numbers, and where's the result of it? There's a lot of talk. Where's the action? Deficit hawks irked that the Senate did not match their mandate of $2 trillion in spending cuts to balance out tax cuts. Still want to make more tweaks to the budget measure that's already ping-ponged across the Capitol 3 times in less than 2 months. Trump and Johnson's argument. Republicans need to get cranking now on Trump's legislative agenda, with Johnson hammering home the point that progress is especially critical as the president's tariffs continue to rattle the financial markets. The message that I'm delivering is that speed really matters and time is not on our side, and I think the sooner we get this done, the better. Johnson making the exact same point we've been making.
Mm-hmm.
Time is not on our side, and what does that mean? The midterms.
Right. Ted Cruz made that point, I think, last week.
Right. The robust whip operation has already been underway for days. White House officials called holdouts over the weekend, and Johnson stopped by the House Freedom Caucus's weekly meeting Monday night, where loyalty to leadership is typically sparse. White House Budget Director Russ Vought and his deputy Dan Bishop also at one point headed into an off-campus meeting location. Kumbaya was the speaker's message as he entered the gathering just before 8 p.m. after meeting earlier in the evening with a group of moderates worried about Medicaid cuts and other pieces of the plan. Upon leaving the Freedom Caucus confab, Johnson described a great conversation and thoughtful deliberation and vowed to press ahead. We're going to try to move this week. But several hardline Republicans are still saying they will vote no on the Senate budget blueprint as it stands now, and about a dozen more leaning against it. And unless the House's GOP fiscal hawks can get on board before lawmakers are scheduled to depart Thursday for a 2-week Easter recess, Trump won't be able to tout progress until late April at the earliest on the GOP's dream bill of tax cuts, military spending, border security investments, energy policy, and more. Representative Lloyd Smucker, a representative from Pennsylvania, a member of both the Budget and Tax Writing Ways and Means Committee, was frank in his belief that the Senate product just isn't tenable on the House side now or even 2 weeks from now. If people can't decide now that we can agree on some floor for spending cuts, then this is not going to happen later. And that's the problem with, by the way, there is... That's the problem with Doge promoting so loudly the things that they are going to. There's no problem with what Doge is doing. No. The problem is not Doge announcing all these things. I mean, it might have been the fact that you're promising a $5,000 check, or people believe you're promising a $5,000 check from all the savings. Well, then if you're going to have that, that should be in the bill, and we know that's not going to be any bill.
Right.
That's not going to be in there anywhere.
No.
They're talking about a tariff, a tariff rebate, but you're not going to see this in this bill. It's not in the continuing resolution to get us through to October 1st, so that would be something that would have to come out over the summer in the bill. But then again, if you're doing all this spending, where are the cuts going to be?
Right. Yeah, because with all the noise, you're essentially issuing a challenge. You're setting up Congress, and Congress has to act on the noise.
Well,
because the noise makes all the news. That's what goes viral, and your work has to reflect that because, well, we all thought you're on the same side.
Well, the worst thing you can do is be debating against yourself.
Exactly.
About, here are these successes. Okay, well, we want to see the successes not just be said. We want to see the successes actually in the behavior of what Congress does. And I know Elon Musk is not Congress, but the fact is Trump is promoting this bill and is not promoting. He's not out there saying, hey, Congress, we need to get all these Doge cuts. It needs to be represented in that 10-year budget. And if you can't do it then he needs to be promoting that it will be in the budget that starts October 1st for the next year. And he's not doing it.
No.
And that's the challenge that you face when you're basically on one hand, Trump is promoting how incredible Doge is doing. On the other hand, he's pushing for the continuing resolution and now this framework for 10 years that has none of these cuts that would represent anything that Doge has done.
Right.
And you're not going to have the Congressional Conservative Caucus agree to that. They're just not going to.
No.
They're going to want something.
And I don't know where that is. I don't know what satisfies them, because it would have to be significant, something with some real meat on the bone.
Well, what they're saying is we got $2 trillion, and we're not even talking about cutting. They're saying we have $2 trillion in extra spending.
Right.
That they have to count the tax cuts in.
Right. Yeah.
That's $2 trillion over 10 years.
Yeah.
So they're like, we need $200 billion in cuts then.
Right.
To just be even. Forget about hitting the cuts that you say Doge will give you. And then you've got the increase in border. You got the $100 billion more over $100 billion more that the president wants. That I don't believe that will be in this budget. That's $100 billion, I believe, for the budget starting October 1st. And so you look at it and you're right, all right, you can't sit there on one hand and brag you are making the most incredible cuts that will enrich people, that everything will be great. We can give you a check. The budget, there'll be no budget problems anymore. And then you've got budget problems.
Yeah. Yeah, because when you get down to making the sausage, nothing has changed.
And none of the debate, all the debate is within the Republican Party. None of it even includes any Democrats. It's not that you're fighting Democrats. It's that Republicans will end up fighting Republicans on this based on the fact that we're making so many incredible cuts. Well, if you are, where are they?
Right. Because if you're not going to do that, if there is no action soon, then the whole Doge thing goes to the background.
Yeah.
And we don't hear anything until July 4th of next year. And it's a whimper of a
but it doesn't
report.
Doesn't do any good at that point.
No, of course
it doesn't do any good because it's
it's over.
Where are the cuts?
Right, it's over. If you can't act on it, on what you find, and if you can't act now, based on the noise you've made surrounding it, and also the idea that, again, you can make these cuts without hurting anyone. But you're not going to do it. That doesn't make sense to conservatives, rank-and-file conservatives who want some cuts.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. I will say this, though. It seems as if the conservative congressional caucus has been extremely quiet.
Yeah.
Knowing what's in this Senate bill, they have been quiet. Have you seen Chip Roy out there?
I have not.
No. And so that's really interesting. And I just wonder, after Mike Johnson and the win on the whole proxy thing, and we saw nothing from Representative Luna yesterday, what was said? Because everybody seems to be pretty quiet in the House, don't they, right now?
Yeah.
I mean, Johnson's speaking, and you had the one leader, Republican leader from the Ways and Means Committee that was interviewed and said, well, if we don't have the votes now, we don't have the votes in 2 weeks.
Well, and there's also been source stories that say that there are a few GOPers on Capitol Hill that have voiced their concerns to the president on tariffs, that they would like to see deals get done. And look, as of right now, as of this moment, which could change later this morning, I don't know that there's that kind of battle brewing. But you have to build for that contingency. So you've got the internal battle within the House, right? You've got the conservative caucus. Then you've got, what might happen in the Senate. And then you've got the possibility, if this tariff thing goes on too long, that they're forced by their constituents to do something about that. So it's an internal battle on Capitol Hill, and possibly, and hopefully it does not get to that, an internal battle between Capitol Hill, the GOP on Capitol Hill, and the president on tariffs. And again, I really hope and pray it doesn't ever get to that.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.